We are going to start with the core concepts of object-oriented programming languages. So in this session, we are going to cover objects and classes. Objects is something which you see around you. It's a real world entity. So for examples, we can say car, dog, a table, laptop, person. They're all, objects. Objects basically contains two things. One is a state and a behavior. Let's take two examples here. We are seeing two objects. One is Honda CRV car, the other one is Toyota Corolla. If you see here in these two cars, they have some common properties. Like if you see a Toyota Corolla or Honda CRV, you see they are containing some common properties. Let's take Honda CRV. It is having a make and it is having a model. It's having a year. It's having a type. It's having a seating capacity. So the same properties you have it for Toyota Corolla. Now, what is making these two things then different objects? Basically, the values that you put under these properties is making these two different objects. Let's take a person class or let's take a person object. They, if you see one person, you will have, you can derive what are the properties of a person. Like he's having a name, he's having an age, he's having a gender. So these are the properties of a person you can extract from him. So on looking at an object, you are able to see what are all the properties that object contains, right? So in this case of car, you have some behaviors. So with the car, you can accelerate, you can change the gear, you can brake, you can steer. All these things are a behavior of a car. In case of person, a person can walk, a person can run. These are all behaviors of a person. So any object that you see will have a state and a behavior. State is nothing but the properties or what an object possesses, and behaviors is something what an object can do. Let's come to class. Class is nothing but a blueprint from which objects can be created. So now we looked at two objects, Honda CRV and Toyota Corolla. And with these two objects, what we are trying to achieve here is we are extracting the common properties from these two objects. If you see, if you place it side by side and see what are all the common properties. This also I'm seeing as a car. This also a car. So what are the common properties of a car? I'm just trying to extract it. So when I extract it, I'm getting these are the common properties. If the common properties between these two objects are make, model, year, type, and seat capacity. So I'm going to have these common properties and create a class, and I'm going to name the class as car. So here the objects are Honda CRV and Toyota Corolla, but the class is car. So class is forming a blueprint from the objects. So you see one object and you get the properties from the object, and with that properties you are going to you are going to see few more objects and extract the properties, and you identify that these objects, whatever I see in common, are having some common properties. But even though they have the common properties, how that objects are different is what is the value that goes inside the common properties. So in case of Honda CRV car, we see they are having the properties like make, model, year, type, capacity. But what value goes in that is different when you do a other car. So again, objects are physical entities, but class is more like a logical entity. There is nothing like a car. You can say Honda CRV, that is an object, but car is not an object, right? It's Honda CRV is an object, but Toyota Corolla is an object. And if you are coming up with a Honda Accord, that is also an object. And that object is also going to have a common properties. So once you define a class, like which is having this common properties, from the class I can say if I'm considering anything as a car, then that object should have all these common properties in it. So from the class, once you define a class, I can create new objects from the class. What is going to be make those objects unique is by what is the value that goes inside those properties. So once you define a template, And now with this template I can say like any object, if you want to become a car, you should have all these properties. So I'm just trying to see the objects around me, identify the common properties, and create a class for them. So make it as a kind of a generic template from which I can create multiple objects going forward. So in order to be a object of that particular class, this object should have those properties in place. In Java, let's see how to create a class. So as you know, we always write a class. It is public class person. So here the person is the name of the class. We'll talk about public in the later sessions. Class is the keyword for creating a class. So basically it is kind of creating a type here. We are creating a type. Person is a type, or we are creating a new data type. It's a kind of a derived type, right? So we have already integer, string, and all these things, but those are all, I mean, string is not again a primitive type, but we have integer, float, and other character. Those are all primitive types. Even you can consider string at this point of time, a primitive type, just to which will help you to understand this concept. So here we are creating a new user defined data type, and that data type is going to contain some primitive types. So in case of person, we'll see what are the properties of a person. So a person will have a first name, a person will have a last name, a person will have a age. And you see, first name is a string, last name is a string, and age is an integer. So they are made up of, already we have known about these data types. With the help of the known data types, we are creating one more new data type, which is called person. So person means he should have a string, and an integer. And the first string is the first name, second string is the last name, and third is the integer. So this first name, last name, age is called as the properties of a person. You can also call it as a state. Then with this help of the properties, the person is going to do some behavior, right? From a person, I can say what is the get full name. So when you want a full name, all that you need to do is append the first name and last name with the space and give it as a full name. So this is one type of behavior I can achieve. But this behavior is depending on the properties. As you see here, if I want to get the full name, it is performing some operations on the properties and it is yielding you a result. Let's get one more behavior. If I wanted to see a person is eligible to vote, I can have a method written there, and this method is going to operate on the property called age. So if the age of the person is greater than or equal to 18, then I'm going to return true, else I'm going to return false. So basically these two, get full name and is eligible to vote, are the methods, and you notice that there is no static in that. So basically they are all instance methods. So this is called as the behavior, get full name and is eligible to vote, and first name, last name, age is called as the properties. So there are different namings you will be using. You can call that as a fields, members, properties, state, instance variable, all refer to these fields actually. And this one we call it as a behavior, or we call it as methods or instance methods basically. How to create objects? So now we have created a class, public class person, and person is going to have the properties first name, last name, age, and it is having a behavior, get full name, is eligible to vote. All these things we defined. Now we have created a template. From this template I am going to get objects. From this template, now I created a standard for person. If he has to be a person, he should have first name, last name, and age. And he's going to have a get full name method. He's going to have a is eligible to vote. So it's a self-contained class I have created now. Now I need to create objects for this class. How do I create objects? So let's take another class and have a main method there and try to write person1 is equal to new person of. So what is this person1 is equal to new person of? Whenever you say new person, the new person part of it is going to be creating an object. Here the first person stands for the class name, and new person is nothing but an object of the class. That is, means it is one instance of the class. Suppose if you are having let's say we are having a template. If you are going for any government office and you want to take a license, you will be filling up some certain forms. That form, you will have a standard template in that form, right? It will have the first name, last name, it will have your height, weight information, all this age information, date of birth information. So it will be having a template for you to fill actually. So that template is, you are, when you take a form, you are one instance of that template, right? One instance of that class. If some person is taking, he is another instance of that. Like that, you can get many instances of the same template, and the values that you put inside the template is going to be different. If I fill it, I'll fill my first name, last name, and age. But if you fill it, you fill your details actually. But the template is going to be the same for you and me. So here the template is nothing but your class, and the instance of the template is something what I'm taking at that particular time, and filling it is nothing but your instance of the class, which is nothing but your object. So new person is going to create a new object, and person one is nothing but a reference to the object created. You have created an object in the memory, and I'm going to refer that object using a reference variable called person, person one actually. So in the program, if you see here, person one dot first name equal to John, person one dot last name equal to Peter, person one dot age is equal to 18. Like I can assign for this instance, I'm putting my information in the form. Like I'm just filling the first name as John, second name as last name as Peter, age as 18. I fill my information. Once I fill the information, I'm just going to the counter and asking whether I'm eligible to get a license. Similarly, once I fill the form, I'm going like person one dot get full name. Now it is going to call the get full name method, and it is going to return first name and last name together. Second, if you see the system.println can vote, it is going to call person one dot is eligible to vote, and is eligible to vote is going to work with the person one instance, and it is going to operate on the person one fields or properties and get you the result. Here the person one age is going to be 18, so it is going to work. If you call the function, the age value is going to get 18. Age greater than equal to 18 is going to get returned true here. So that's how the objects and instances works here. We are going to now look at the memory allocation part of it. So let's say if you are doing in any program integer I is equal to 10. So how the memory is allocated is, it is going to get allocated in the stack memory. So for each method, if you are writing a main method, it is going to get a stack memory created for it. And that stack memory is going to have a variable. If you see I is a variable and 10 is the value, so 10 value will be referenced by a placeholder called I. So if I wanted to access 10, I'll be using I as my placeholder. So it corresponds to a memory location, and in that memory location it is getting stored 10 as a value. So basically all the variables are going to get created in the stack memory. So next, person P1 is equal to new person. When you execute this statement, when you create an object of a class, what is actually going to happen is the new person will not be in the stack memory, but it will be in the heap memory. So what is this memories? Basically, memory is nothing but it's your RAM basically. Whatever you have it in a system, the RAM allocation is your memory. And if you have a, like let's say 8 GB RAM, in that 8 GB RAM, some RAM is given to Java for storing or creating the objects, for maintaining these variables, for performing operation. It needs some memory place to store the variables and execute things, right? That part of the memory that Java uses for storing the, for creating the objects, for storing the values of the objects, those memory is called as nothing but the heap memory. So it's a part of memory that is allocated from RAM for executing the Java program. So Java reserves some memory from RAM that is nothing but your heap memory and stack memory. So here, when you call new person, what is going to happen is it is going to create a new instance of a person. That means it is going to reserve some memory locations in the heap memory. So let's say if there is some free memory at location 4200, it is going to block that memory location for storing the person object. So what is a person object? If you read the definition of the person class, it has first name, last name, and age. So it is going to reserve some memory location for storing the first name, for storing the last name, and storing the age. So what is the first name, last name, age is nothing but the placeholders. Basically it is going to be assumed like 4200 is the starting location, 4201 may be first name, 2 may be last name, 4203 may be age. It may not be exactly the same thing, but I'm just giving a rough idea how the memory allocations would happen. So all that I need to understand not the individual locations. I need to know only the first location. The first location where the objects is getting created is 4200. If it is 4200, I just need to know that reference actually. So that 4200 is nothing but the reference which is going to get returned to the calling place. When you say new person of, it is going to create an object in memory and it is going to return 4200 back to you. And when you get back that 4200, you are going to put that in the variable called p1. And p1 is a kind of a reference variable which is going to point to the object in the memory. So if you see here in the stack memory, just like I is holding 10, p1 is going to hold 4200. p1 is not going to hold the person object itself, but p1 is going to hold the memory location where the person object is created. It is not going to contain the object itself, it is going to just have a reference to the object. It is not, it's just having a handle to the object. So if I wanted to access the object, I will be using this handle to access the object, because I know where this object is available. Once I know where it is, I can just go to that object and access that object. Remember, like you are having if you are having a house, the house is a physical entity, you are having a house here. You know, it is not, if you give somebody like, okay, this is the address of the house, they can access your house because you have given the handle that is nothing but your address. The moment you give the address, they can always, read the address and come to that address. So the address is going to be the house is going to be there. It's, you can consider that as a person object residing in the memory. The way to access is nothing but, the address which to access that house. So once you know the once you have the handle where the object is located, you can simply use the handle to locate the the properties there. P1 dot first name equal to John, P1 dot last name equal to John, sorry, Peter, P1 dot age is equal to 18. So it means 4200 dot first name, go to the 4200 location and access the first name, first name field of it, which will determine the address of the first name, and it will give it to you, and where you can update your values to that actually. So once you perform these three updates, what is going to happen, your objects originally will have a null value for this first name, last name, and the age. Age will be 0, but they are going to get replaced with the values that you are assigning now. So person p1 equal to new person of is going to create a memory, reserve a memory location, and p1 dot first name, last name, and age will get assigned the values that you are assigning to this to this address. Now let's say we are creating a new person, person p2 is equal to new person of. Now what is going to happen, whenever you see a new person, it is going to create a new location in the memory. Now it is going to be a different, it is going to take a different memory location, whichever is free at that time. So 5100, let's say it is free, it is going to reserve that block of memory location for holding this person object. Now if you access with the handle p2, you have a reference for p2 which is going to be storing 5100, and if I say p2 dot first name equal to Eric, it is going to not update the 4200 location, but it is going to update the 5100 location because we are accessing with the p2 handle. So all the values will get updated accordingly, depending on what you give it here. Okay, let's say now we are giving person p3 is equal to p2. What is the meaning of it? Here, there is no new person is going to be created because we didn't say new person. That means I'm not getting a new person here. Instead, what I'm doing here is I'm assigning p3 is equal to p2. And what is p3? p3 is a reference of a person class. So what I'm going to do is, it is just like having, let's say if I do integer b is equal to I, what is going to happen? It is just going to copy the value of 10, which is referenced by I, into the b, right? The same thing is going to happen here. We are going to create a p3 reference variable, and it is going to copy whatever value there in the, whatever value that is present in p2, it is going to get copied to p3. So p3 is just going to have 5100 here. It is just going to get copied. What do you mean by copying this? That means now we have two handles for the same object. P2 and P3 both refers to the same object. So now if you try to update p3 dot first name is equal to Jim, then what happens? It is going to update the object. Update the object of 5100 from Eric to Jim. And if you try to access with p2, the p2 get me the p2 dot first name, it is going to show the reflected value here, because it is like having a house and having two keys for the house. If if you have two keys, anyone can open the door, and inside the going inside the house, if say if you are changing a furniture location, the other person, if he enters with another key, he's also going to see the reflection that is happening out there. He's also not going to see the same place where he kept the furniture, since the other person has moved it with other key. So any updates to the object is going to happen uh, if you the p3 and p2 are just handles of the object, and the object is the same object what we are using here. So if I say p3.age is equal to 20, it is going to update from 16 to 20. And if I access system.println p2.age, it's not going to say 16, it is now going to say 20, because we used another handle to update the same object. Okay, so let's do this in this program in Eclipse. For that, let's try to create a new package. First, we'll create a class, and in this, instead of basic, I'm going to keep it as oops or oop. So here I'm going to create a class called person, and I'm not going to have a main method for this. Of course you can have it, but I just wanted to keep it separate. So this is just a class I'm going to create, and if it is not having a main method, you cannot run it, of course. So person class is going to have first name, last name, and age. Now I'm going to write some methods which operates on these variables. So I'm saying public string get full name, and to get the full name, what I have to do is return first name plus give a space and then last name. I'm just concatenating the first name and last name and returning to it. Then let's try to do the vote, eligible to vote, check whether a person is eligible to vote. So I'm just giving is eligible to vote and return a boolean here. So I'm going to say is eligible to vote, return age is greater than or equal to 18. So here, if you see here, it is going to, this evaluates to true or false. If age greater than or equal to 18, it is going to return true. If it is false, it is going to return false. So you can also use if else for doing this, but it's a shorter way of doing it. Now this class is done. Now I have a class which has the properties and behaviors. Now I have to write one more class to test this, for testing whether the person class is working as expected. I'm just creating another class called person test. I'm going to have a main method for this. This is the test class, so it is going to execute the main method now, and in the main method I'm going to create person objects. So I'm going to create person p1 is equal to new person of. So now if you think through it, it is going to create a new person, and it is going to give the memory variable wherever the person got created to p1, and p1 is going to hold the location when you, this all happens when you run the program. So now p1 dot first name equal to say John, p1 dot last name equal to Peter, p1 dot age is equal to 17. Now I created a person object. It's an instance of a class. So you have a person class, and now I got an instance of the class, and I assign the variables to it. I assign the properties of the class. Now once I have assigned the properties, now if I invoke the methods, I will be getting some proper responses. So what I can do is system.out.println. If I say get p1.get, you see the methods are coming here, p1.get full name. So now what is going to happen, if you run this program, you are going to get the you're going to get John Peter. That means it is going to concatenate and give you the results. Now if you want to see whether this he is eligible to vote or not, I can always say system.println is, sorry, eligible to vote. Oops, what's happening? P1 dot is eligible to vote. So it is going to give the result of P1. So let's create one more object. Person P2 is equal to new person of, and if I try to access now the same thing with just copy these two things and do it for P2. Remember, I didn't assign any values to P2. I'm just trying to do P2 dot is eligible to vote here. So now it's going to happen. If you run this program, John Peter eligible to vote is false, right? Because he's having ages 17. And what happens to this person? If you see here, this is because we didn't give any first name, last name, so it is going to take null as the value. That's the default value when you don't give any values to it. So it's giving null, null, and eligible to vote is false because age value will be 0 because it is an integer. So instance variable gets default values. So for strings, it is going to get null values. For integer, it is going to get integer or any numbers, it is going to get a 0 value. So that's the reason you are seeing like this. So what you have to do is you have to assign some proper values to it to get some proper results. So, and then this is for P2 object. I mean, for the second memory location, we are updating, not for the P1. So if you update P1, it is going to get reflected in the original object P1. So now we'll make it as Eric and leave it like that. And now give the value as 19 here and see. So now you see Eric Peter here and then eligible to vote as true here because his age is 19. Now I can have one more reference to it. As I said before, I have person P3 equal to P2. Let's have like this. Person P3 is equal to P2. That means we have two handles pointing to the same object. Now if I update P3 dot last name equal to James. Now what will happen here if I sys out P3 dot last name, I will also do a sys out of P2 dot last name. We'll try to do both of these things. Now we run this program. Now you see both last names are coming as James because earlier P2 dot last name was getting Eric Peter, or you can even ask P2 dot get full name here. So earlier it was having Eric Peter, but now it is having Eric James because we updated the last name, but we updated using P3. But even though you updated with P3, both P3 and P2 are referencing to the same object here because we copied the address of P2 to P3. I mean, we copied the reference of P2. P2 is nothing but pointing to an object in the memory, and we copied that reference into P3. So it is just like having two handles for the same object. I can update it with any handle, which will get reflected in other handles as well.